Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Joelle Simone Anthony and I am also known as the Grave Woman. Today I will be answering more of the questions received during day 5 of the 12 days of birthday giveaway that myself and Little Miss Funeral did last month. So let's go ahead and jump right in. The first question comes from Leanne Brooks and it reads, my question is, have you ever had family be upset that their family member didn't look like their self after they were embalmed and casketed? Yes, Leanne, I have. And it's completely natural for the family to be that way, because the truth of the matter is that no matter how great of a job we do during the restorative art and embalming processes that we do in the funeral home, their family member is deceased and is not going to look like themselves because they're not alive. We see our family members and friends alive and well for the majority of our life, if not all of the time that we've had them in our lives. And the last time that we see them, they're laying down and they're deceased. So I have had family members not only be upset, but be completely overwhelmed by the way that their family member or friend or loved one looked in the casket. And though funeral directors, I'm going to go ahead and try to speak for everyone here, that I know do the best that they can to give the most natural and lifelike appearance, it is impossible for us to make the deceased look as they did in life because they are deceased. Now, on the flip side, I've actually had family members be very excited and pleased because, believe it or not, there are some people that look better dead than they do alive due to sickness, due to trauma, due to, just age. And I've had family members be very satisfied with the work that's been done. So I hope that answers your question. The next question is from Cynthia and it reads, how do you handle a family if they want to bury a person, but that person stated before they died that they wanted cremation, like they paid for it? Okay, Cynthia, in this case, if I understand your question correctly, you're saying that someone has come in and made pre-arrangements and already paid for their services, but at the time of their death, their family decides that they want to bury them. If they are coming to the funeral home where they have made pre-arrangements, or a funeral home that belongs to a network of funeral homes where they have paid for their final arrangements and funeral and everything, we have to honor that pre-need contract. It's called a contract because we are contractually obligated to make sure that the wishes of the deceased that were put in place prior to their death are fulfilled. And if the family's upset about it, there's just really nothing that they can do about it. Now, if that family decides to go to another funeral home where that person does not have a pre-need contract, then that funeral home has no knowledge of what the deceased wanted and will then make their decision based on what the next of kin or the person who has the right of disposition is saying. Now, hopefully the deceased would have something or someone in place that would advocate for them and say, no, this is what this person wanted and here's the contract, and possibly take it to court if it got that far. But in most cases, people are just so relieved that there are arrangements in place already that they just go along with what the deceased already had pre-planned. Thank you for your question. The next question reads, my question is, what kind of social life do you have? Are you always on call? And it comes from Marissa Macy. Marissa, to answer your question, I have a pretty good social life. I have a very supportive family that I spend time with when I can. My parents live in a different state. My sister lives in a different state. I'm in a wonderful relationship and I have great friends. And it's so funny because when I first started out in the funeral service industry, I was working all of the time. But gratefully, I'm so grateful that I'm in a place now where I have a lot more autonomy and control over my schedule. So I have a pretty good social life. If there's something that I want to do, or, you know, a family event going on, I can schedule my time to say, okay, I'm doing this. Or if I want to get together with friends, I'm able to do that. Now, when I first started out, it was not like that at all. I wasn't necessarily on call all of the time, but I had to be available pretty much whenever. But thankfully, that is not the case anymore. I'm going to get more into that in another video, but to answer your question, I have a great social life. Thank you for asking. The next question is from Paul Thomas, and it reads, I've never arranged a funeral before. What's the most important thing I need to know before I start the process? Okay. And then I really didn't understand your question thoroughly, Paul. So I asked you what to go in a little bit deeper. And you let me know that you weren't making arrangements for yourself or planning for anyone else, but you just wanted to know what the most important things were. And I told you that the most important things that you need to know about going to the funeral home and making arrangements, in my opinion, would be knowing what to bring. And those things, and I'm looking down because I typed this answer out, you need to know what to bring to the funeral home. And the reason I say that is because a lot of times coming into a funeral home is very stressful when you're coming in to make arrangements for someone at need, meaning that someone has already passed away and now you're in the process of planning their funeral. They've passed away or they're about to pass away. And you want to try to get as much as you can done in that one arrangement setting so that you're not running back and forth and constantly having to come back and forth to the funeral home. So I gave you the list of the birth certificate, the driver's license, the life insurance information if there is any, photos, clothing, jewelry, socks, underwears, ties, any makeup that you would prefer to be used. And those are just to name a few. Another thing that was not on that list, Paul, would be a form of payment, meaning either your debit card, credit card, or your checkbook. And the reason I say that is because you want to go ahead and get everything squared away while you're there so that you're not having to handle the business aspect of things when you're trying to spend time with your family or at the funeral service. Other things that are important to know about going to the funeral home is that, you know, those that are there working are there to cater to you. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to, you know, say, well, I don't really know what this means, or can you explain this to me? Ask questions before you sign anything. Ask questions if there's something that is not clear to you. Also, look up what your state requires and what it doesn't require so that you don't end up spending money on, let's say, a vault. If the cemetery does not, that you're burying someone in, if they don't require an outer burial container, you won't have to spend that money on an outer burial container unless it's something that you want to do. Or embalming may not be required by your state or county. And if, you know, you don't want to have the embalming done, you won't have to have it done. I hope that answers your question. And the final question for today is, what is one funeral that has stuck with you? Was it good or bad? Okay, so there is one experience, and it's so funny because I was recently telling a friend about this earlier this week. But there is one funeral that has stuck with me, and for the last, I don't know, month, I've kind of been thinking about the family and wondering how they're doing. So I'll go ahead and tell you a short story. There was a gentleman who passed away in this area called Lake Lanier, which is a beautiful lake up in the northern part of Georgia. I don't want to say northern Georgia, but like it's north of Atlanta. It's about 30-45 minutes north of Atlanta. And basically he drowned at Lake Lanier, and his family is Hispanic and they did not speak English. And a lot of times when Hispanic families come into the funeral home, if we don't have a bilingual funeral director, they'll have their children translate. Now, I was not the actual funeral director that worked with this family. I was just there at the service helping out, you know, making sure we expected a very large crowd. So I was there helping out and making sure that everything was just running smoothly. And when the actual family came in about an hour prior to the service for the visitation, I happened to answer the door and met the family. The funeral director had to run out for a second, so I was responsible for giving them the first viewing of the deceased. And it was like the family hadn't processed that. They didn't believe the man was dead. They thought it was possible that it was a case of mistaken identity because they had not viewed him yet. And I had to be the one to actually show them the deceased. And when they saw him in that casket, the level of heartbreak and just the emotion that came out, oh my gosh, it broke my heart. And that has always stuck with me. And I almost have a level of guilt because I know I didn't do anything wrong, but it was like I took away that last hope from them by showing them the deceased. And I was almost, to be honest with you, I believe that funeral director left that day because she knew she just didn't want to do it. And I'm not mad at her. It was just I was not prepared for that situation. And if she had communicated to me that the family was in such disbelief, I would have been more mentally prepared. So it sticks with me for those two reasons. But to answer your question, that is one of the cases that sticks with me. On a positive note, there was a funeral that I worked for, a little girl who passed away that was about 12 years old. And honestly, I don't even know how she died. I don't know if it was foul play or if she was ill. I honestly don't know. But the thing that sticks out to me about that service and about her family is that her mom just was so grateful for the time that they had together. And even when she got up to speak about her, she cried. And of course she was emotional. She lost her child, and that's a pain that very few people could ever imagine or experience and be grateful through. But just the way that she spoke about how grateful she was for the time she had with her daughter and the way that her daughter changed her life, for her to be able to get up there and articulate her gratitude despite her grief was absolutely amazing to me. So those are two cases that have stuck with me on both the negative and the positive ends of the spectrum. If you'd like to learn more, please visit my website, www.thegravewoman.com. Make sure to follow me on all of your major social media outlets at The Grave Woman. And if you haven't already, please make sure that you're subscribed to this channel and that you turn on the notifications, like, comment, and share this video with anyone that you think may find it interesting, insightful, or helpful. Live life, love hard, and I'll talk to you next time.